Alex. I cannot wait to break down Andor, the first season, episode 5, with you on our rewatch episode. We're getting geared up for Andor, and it's right around the corner. And the proof is in the pudding. We now have a trailer.
Yeah.
You've already done your reaction. You're giving your thoughts and everything to the listeners. I just wanted to chime in a little bit. I didn't get to be on that when I was in transit, but
yes.
So we have an Andor season 2 trailer now. Oh my goodness! Just like my thoughts were, first off, the trailer itself has a very different feel than any Star Wars trailer. I think before the Skeleton Crew trailer was similar, but this one just kind of took that to 11 in terms of having the song more. They were trying to showcase a much different tone than I think we associate with Andor. And whether that means that season 2 actually does have a different tone, or whether or not that's just for the purposes of marketing, we'll see. But off the bat, I did see just a lot more color, more people interacting in ways that were not so dire all the time, and maybe it's just with where season 2 is going to be set, kind of the rebellion's established at that point. Cassian's been in the game for a little while. It seemed more like a James Bond, slick spy thriller than Andor, which is this
moody
guerrilla revolutionary show. I'm really interested to see, pumped that Krennic's going to be back. Ben Mendelsohn's looking incredible as Krennic again. I'm pumped.
So some of the things that I talked about on the breakdown, Mac, was that wheat planet stood out to me. And I was thinking, I think that's Dantooine.
Yeah. I actually was just playing Knights of the Old Republic recently, just as a kind of revisiting that. And Dantooine's, it could definitely be that if they're going with what Dantooine looks like in, KOTOR and stuff for the canon.
Think about Lost Stars. There was an actual rebel base on Dantooine that they actually did abandon, and that's why in A New Hope, Leia brings it up because she's thinking, well, there's not a ton of people that live there. If you're going to fire this thing, do as least amount of damage as possible, do it on Dantooine. Right. Because there was actually a rebel base there at one point. So I'm wondering, is this the establishment of a rebel base? There were some other theories that it could be Lothal, but it's not giving me Lothal vibes at all.
Yeah, Dantooine seems more likely to me. And it also kind of evoked, where Jyn grows up with Galen and Lara, or Lana. I can't remember. Is it Lara?
Lana Lang.
Lana Lang, Lois Lane, where Mad Mikkelsen and Lois Lane live. It kind of reminded me of that agrarian type feel, and I associate that with Dantooine pretty closely. But it looked like there was maybe going to be a wedding for Mon Mothma's daughter. That's what I would guess.
A lot of people pointed that out because I was like, man, Mon Mothma's getting it down in the club, which was unexpected. And a lot of people were pointing out that is probably her daughter's wedding. And I was like, is it though? Because she seems happy dancing, but when you rewatch it a lot, I don't know if she is actually happy. That could just be a Chandrillan tradition dance type thing.
Right. And, you never know how somebody's putting it on for their wedding day or whatever. Hey, I have to be happy today, so I'm going to be happy even if I'm not, excited about it or whatever. Anything could be going on there. Sure. But it looked like that. So I'm excited that we're going to get more of Mon Mothma's story, especially watching episode 5 of season 1 for this week's. All the dynamics between her daughter and her husband are so interesting, and I love to see the side of this objectively heroic character, Mon Mothma, but then the price at home kind of that her involvement in the rebellion is taking a toll on, and all of that. So I'm excited we're going to get more of that with that the wedding and that kind of thing probably.
We see a lot of Davos Skolden in the trailer, who is the one betrothing his son to Mon Mothma's daughter.
Yeah.
So I imagine he is going to be a bigger character. He's more of a like black market underworld type character, which is interesting because like he is butting up with the Imperials, it seems, in this trailer quite a bit.
Yeah, it's not that uncommon, I don't think. Though, like if you look at our real life and stuff, I mean, like, look at like how the Kennedys got their start as a family and stuff. Like it's, all that's possible. Well, bootlegging, I think, particularly, but
but then also think, they allow Jabba the Hutt to maintain power and operate, and they're not out on Tatooine trying to clean up crime.
They partner with it for their own advancement. That's more the Imperial MO. So that works out there. But
and then I don't know if you noticed when we had the scene of the guy laying dead, it seems like, in a facility, and the X-Wings taking off. I'm pretty sure, Mac, that's Dakar from The Force Awakens. That's the Resistance base that they strike Starkiller Base out of. It looks exactly the same, and I'm wondering if like the Rebels set up a base there, abandon it, and then the Resistance 30 years later.
Yeah, I mean, we see in The Last Jedi, they're still hiding out in old Rebel bases and stuff. So, I think that connection works perfectly.
There's a couple of things that I do need to correct. I was wrong, I think, about one of the things. I was theorizing because we kept coming back to a scene in the trailer, Mac, where, there's like, it looks like a violent uprising in a square. Like we keep coming back to that scene in the trailer where stormtroopers are up on a step firing down at people. There's dead stormtroopers on the step. There's fire. There's explosions. There's that guy at the fountain like screaming with a blaster in his hand. I theorized on the breakdown that could be on Coruscant, and there could be like some sort of uprising in the core world, and that's really when the rebellion is like, okay, we can step out of the shadows now because look at what happened. But a lot of other people, like Alex from Star Wars Explained, was thinking it might be the Gorman Massacre, which prompts Mon Mothma to speak out, and that's what kind of gets her fully into the rebellion. So I think that's probably what it is.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, because we know that that's coming for Mon Mothma in some way, right? And because like her advocacy for the Gormans and everything has already started in season 1. Yeah. But that pivotal event, hasn't happened.
Even like episode 4, she mentioned the Gormans in season 1, right? So, I think that makes the most sense. And then I also kept calling the TIE fighter that Cassian's in a TIE Reaper, because I was just associating it with Rogue One, but it's actually a TIE Avenger. And it's a little more similar to Kylo Ren's ship. It's kind of like a prototype, it seems. So just some corrections.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we will eventually get to the episode 5 breakdown. Do not worry. There's one other piece of business we have to kind of cover first, and that is we have a release schedule for Andor season 2, and it's maybe not what we were expecting.
Yeah, it's 3 episodes every single week, which I think it makes sense. I think what they're doing is they're really trying, even with this trailer, trying to get that general audience. Yeah. And I understand it. Like, and I said this on the breakdown, Mac, it's not good for us as a podcast to do it like that in terms of bunching it all up, and it's kind of a hybrid binge model, but it might be good for Star Wars, and I prefer what's good for Star Wars.
Of course. So, like, I'd rather have the great stories and the fan reaction and everything like that than have our podcast schedule be super easy. So, but yeah, like what you're saying with trying to get the general audience on board, like critics had no issues with Andor season 1. And it did have fairly good numbers, I feel like. But I think it's just from the numbers from Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte that they're a little nervous and everything. So they're really trying to get that general public buy-in. And I think that's what you need to do. There's nobody who's already seen Andor Season 1 who's not going to rush to watch Andor Season 2 because it was that good. It's just the people who don't even know like what's going on. That's who we're trying to capture, pull them in, get them watching the first season before the second season comes out when they see the trailer and everything like that. So I think that's really smart. We will, of course, have to, we're still talking a little bit about how we're going to exactly cover Andor Season 2 in terms of a release schedule for us and everything. I think what we're leaning towards right now is having, still the one big breakdown episode per week. We just may be shaking up the format a little bit to cover more ground and have a little more free form of discussion. So that's kind of what we're leaning to. We'll keep you updated as we have more solids on that. But that's just a little bit of what you can expect from us for Season 2.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, you're listening to Children of the Watch. I'm Mac Lacey.
And I'm Alex Maxwell, and today we are breaking down the 5th episode of Andor for our Rix Road to Season 2 of Andor. If you're new to our podcast, we break down every single episode of Star Wars television, scene by scene, to analyze the story, find comb for Easter eggs, and explain how it all connects to the larger Star Wars universe. And we're going to be doing that today with The Axe Forgets. I love this episode, Mac, and I would love to hear what people think about this episode over on our social media accounts. We're on all of them, except Facebook. Sorry. Follow us over on social media at COT Watch. To engage with us over there. And then we have also got a Patreon that we're starting a book club, and we're reading Reign of the Empire, Mask of Fear, which takes place just 1 year after Revenge of the Sith, and it follows Mon Mothma, Saw Gerrera, and Bell Organa as they lay the foundations of the rebellion. I can't think of a better book to read and do a book club on than this one leading into Andor Season 2. So that's going to be a lot of fun over on Patreon, patreon.com/The Mandalorian Watch, and you can get access to that and over 100 bonus episodes of Children of the Watch for just $2 a month. But I think we should talk about this episode now. We have delayed long enough.
We have put it off. Episode 5, The Axe Forgets. I think this is maybe my third favorite episode of Season 1. Only topped by One Way Out and Rix Road. That is the title of the finale of the season, right? Yeah. Thought I remembered that correctly.
Yeah, you got it.
So like those are obviously big kind of finale set pieces with, bringing arcs home and stuff like that. This is a much quieter episode. If you're in the crowd that you don't go as much for the slow burn storytelling and stuff, I can see why you would easily kind of gloss over this episode, just kind of get through it to get to the big payoff of the actual heist next week and everything. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think we all know the heist is coming next week. But I think it's so important all the dialogue that's had, both for understanding Cassian as a character, understanding the rebellion and where it's at, and what different people are fighting for, what brings all these misfits in together, united under one banner. And then what is it actually like to prepare for one of these huge Star Wars missions, right? We see all the time, they're like, all right, here's the plan. And then we pretty much cut to them doing the thing.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, if there's any time in between those things, you're sitting there worrying, stressing, you're starting to get distrustful of these allies that you may or may not know. And I just love that the show took a moment to explore all that, because it just makes the fight so much more real, and not to mention just the way that this episode, I think it takes all the Star Wars themes and everything from the abstract and just goes right in with like, this is how this applies to life, like in the real world in general. Extracted from the Empire versus the Rebellion in a galaxy far, far away. So I don't know, super important episode. I think you can tell I'm a fan of this one.
Like on rewatch, this is so good. Like there's something so almost tactile about the episode. Yeah. There's something that when you watch it, it's like, man, I've never imagined the Star Wars galaxy to be so real and so thriving. There's something so real and genuine about this that when you watch it, it resonates with you of like, you put yourself in every main character's shoes, especially, Cassian and Mon Mothma, and like you can see yourself in either of those situations, which could not be more different, yet they're still working towards the same goal. And this is just such a fun episode, and it's so meaty, right? Yeah. Like it's what makes next week so good is this one,
it's what makes One Way Out and Rix Road so good. Like I don't think you have the payoff in those episodes without the like emotional setup that's being done in these scenes.
Yeah, it's so good. So our director, once again, is Susanna White, and writer Dan Gilroy. Let's jump into the breakdown. On Coruscant, Syril Carn finds himself in a stage of despair and turns to his mother, Edie Carn, for advice. During their conversation, Edie offers some tough love on the difficulties of leadership and the harsh reality of Cyril's current situation while serving him cereal with blue milk. I love the little container that she has pouring out. Like, if they sell those at Galaxy's Edge, I'm going in 2 weeks. I'm going to get one.
Yeah. I love all of the home stuff that we get to see in this apartment, like their little breakfast nook booth, and
it's cool.
The weird, like, I think it's like a vacuum droid in the corner or something. I don't know. It's just another look at what domestic life in the galaxy looks like on a core world, on a more like populated place than what we're seeing in like the first 3 episodes.
Right. So when Syril starts to question his mom, Edie, like, hey, why didn't you ever come visit me on Pre-Morlana? Like, it was an open invitation. She says an open invitation is no invitation. So she's right about that, right?
That's true. I mean, like, it's so easy to be like, oh, come anytime, welcome. It's so hard to be like, I want you to come to my house on this date at this time for these activities. Right. Like that's such a different thing, right? Like, so she's not wrong. Like she's giving him grief any little chance she gets, but she's not wrong at the heart of it for some of it. I think she has her own issues as well, which we'll get to.
Yeah, it's the Penguin wrapped up before the end of the year. There's kind of a similar thing going on between Syril and his mom and Oswald and his mom in that show. There's kind of like this weird love-hate relationship that they've got with their mothers that are kind of informing them as characters.
Right. And I think with Syril as it, like, we'll see in season 2 ultimately what they do with Syril, because I think it's kind of a question mark at the end of season 1 where his character's going and everything. But with what they've explored with like this version of like male insecurity and stuff, I think exploring kind of like how he probably developed some of that is important. And I think it's apparent it starts at home.
Sure. Yeah. So she recognizes that Cyril's future is uncertain, especially after the fallout from the Ferrix incident, which has left him with few job prospects. So he's kind of striking out on everything that he's trying. And I don't know if you just going back to the very opening scene when he's sitting there and the sun's rising and he's looking out it almost kind of seems like his room's a prison in a way. But I don't know if you noticed that there's like little clone trooper figurines on his desk.
That's fun. I didn't notice that, but that's fun. It's like his room hasn't changed from like when he left it, kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, okay, so he had a fascination with the Republic Army and stuff like that, the clones, that kind of maybe drove him into the field that he was in on Primox Morlana. So determined to help, Edie reassures Syril by offering to call her brother Uncle Harlow for a favor that could help him out. However, Syril remains skeptical, questioning what Harlow might want in return for his help. And then Edie explains that Harlow can connect Syril with someone who could hire him, confident that Harlow knows what's best for Cyril's future. Let me pause. This is just, I think I had the same thought when it came out a few years ago, and I had it again watching this episode. Is there any possibility that Harlow is involved in the rebellion at all?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. It's possible at this juncture. I think that'd be a really nice switch on things, right? Because like watching season 1, I don't really want anything to do with Syril or his family. It's not, they're not comfortable people to spend time with.
Yeah, they're not fun.
Yeah, so like, it's possible, I guess, if to pull that switch. That'd be a cool way to get Syril in some situations where he's really going to have to examine some things and make some hard choices and stuff like that. But we'll see.
Or is it like Harlow's just a code name for Palpatine? Edie is Palpatine's sister.
Yeah. That's why it's so weird between them and Uncle Harlow. It's like, Harlow has abilities and yeah, he's got a lot on his plate. Yeah. But it's watching Syril and his mom interact, it's so clear that like there's a love there. It's not like they hate each other or that like she's a terrible mom to Syril or anything like that. But you immediately see like the pressure of expectation and the desire to keep up, to perform to a way that other people look at and respect and like, and keeping up appearances and things like that. That you can see it weighing on Syril even as he sits there.
Yes,
and so I think like, probably growing up like that, that's why he has such a huge chip on his shoulder and like needs to get out there and prove himself and show everybody that he's the big man, which that's not, like, we saw where that got him. So it's a really, really interesting character study.
It is. On Aldhani, Cassian Andor, using the alias Clem, wakes up to discover that his weapons have been taken. Outside, he encounters Avril Skeen, who reveals that Vel Sartha ordered the search of his belongings, and Skeen assumes Clem fled in a hurry and questions him about his arm injury. He notices a weapon that belongs to Luthen Rael, but Clem refuses to give his real name. And then Skeen attempts to connect with Clem by showing him his tattoos, including a crate head tattoo and a by the hand marking, which Andor recognizes from his past. Yeah. So in there, that was really cool to like. Number one, a crate dragon are the dragons that we saw in season 2 of The Mandalorian, the first episode. Yep. They slay a crate dragon in that episode, if you remember. That's a crate dragon. So I assume it's a gang, crate heads.
Yeah. Either that or I was almost thinking, like, it almost sounded like Drophead from the Penguin and the Batman and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know if it was like a drug thing. Maybe. But they're prison markings. I think gang affiliation or something like that would be more likely. I don't know. But I think the blaster also, he says, was corporate issue because it's the one, I think Andor still has the one he took off the guard. Right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and so that's what he fled with from Ferrix. Yeah.
Yeah. So because he's like, corporate issue. So like, this is a really sketchy set of belongings for somebody to have, right? Like that. Yeah. That could raise some suspicions.
Yeah, and then what I thought was interesting as, Skeen is doing this. By the way, incredible actor. Like, I think he is what I love most about this episode is Skeen's character because, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I kind of feel like he's a dark shadow of Cassian. It's like if Cassian became cynical, he'd be Skeen.
Yeah.
And so like they're very similar, and we'll actually see the fulfillment of that, I feel like, next week in the conclusion of this arc. But there's a lot of similarities there. I don't know. He's a really interesting character to me. But in their conversation, Clem shares, that's Cassian, shares part of his background, claiming he went to a Scipio youth center at 13 and spent 3 years there. Skeen is skeptical of this story, referencing an old saying, the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that Cassian actually went to a youth center at 13, or is that like part of his backstory for his fake persona, Clem?
I tend to think he actually did. It may not have been on Sippo or when he was 13 or something like that. I do think he's... like, he recognizes all these markings.
Yes.
I think he has been inside, and also when he gets into, spoiler alert, in the next arc, he knows what's up. He knows how to conduct himself. It's not the first time he's been, incarcerated.
So that brings up so many questions again about Cassian's past, because like, where was Marva and Clem? Like,
well, I mean, plenty of kids get into youth detention centers who have very involved, loving parents and stuff. So
no, yeah, I agree with that. But then also when he mentions at 16 he was a cook, in the Battle of Mimban, like what's going on there?
Yeah,
maybe he ran away a lot.
Right, that's possible. It could also just be like, he was in these places doing other stuff.
Sure.
Like he was on Mimban, but who knows? Right. But those were records also that Luthen pulled. So I think we know that that's true.
True. Yeah, that's true. Yep.
So I don't know. But like, it's an interesting thought because we don't, like, just because Cassian's the protagonist, I don't think we can take everything he says at face value.
Oh no, definitely not at this point of his life, for sure. And then Skeen, what he ends up talking about of like the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. I love that saying in terms of like, especially when you think about the rebellion and how it's growing at this point of like,
right.
Hey, like, yeah, the axe doesn't remember chopping you down, but the tree certainly does.
Right.
And it's not forgetting, and the axe is just moving on to the next tree, the next thing.
And that's the difference between the Empire and the Rebellion. The Empire is a consuming machine that's not based on, like, I think certain people in the Empire would say it's based on these certain ideals and stuff, but in reality, that's not the case. So, it's, I don't know, it's, that's why ultimately I think the rebellion wins. Like, the axe remembers, or the tree remembers, the axe forgets. Like,
I mean, that's how, like, look at any revolution.
Right.
In the real world, right? I think that statement is true of every single one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like any government, corporation, whatever. Like, okay, so like, I don't think the Chiquita Corporation is worried about the banana wars every day in the 80s and stuff, right? But like, terrible atrocities have been committed, like, by the Chiquita Corporation. So like, I think there are a lot of people in like Central and South America that remember like what happened, and their lives are forever changed. But it was just somebody was, on the other side of things, people were just following orders. It's just another work day kind of deal. And like, ideologically, who's going to fight harder? The person that's reported for their routine duty that day, or the person who's like avenging their fallen brother,
Right.
It's just a big difference.
Huge difference. Andor, sensing Skeen's desire for revenge, admits that he's also not much of a team player, and that's when Skeen opens up about his fellow rebels, and he points out each one of them, and this is where we get to know this crew a little bit more. He points out Karis Nimmick is inexperienced but idealistic, and he, you get the sense, and this is what makes Skeen so interesting to me, that he actually really does like Nimmick, like he is trying to protect him.
I wonder if he was like the brother he lost.
That would make sense.
That's what I assumed that Skeen, and we have the foresight of the next episode and everything. So it's, but I think when I look at Skeen and Nimmick interacting, that's what I see. I think Nimmick is basically now the stand-in for the fallen brother, and so regardless of what Skeen's up to and everything in inside, he's gonna kind of look out for this kid,
Yeah. He points out Cinta Kaz in that she's cold and unflinching, maybe the toughest one of their group. Skeen also points out like she's taken, so don't think don't try anything. It's something that I picked up on this particular watch through that I did not pick up on in the last one, is that Andor does kind of flirt with her a little bit. Vel's like very protective of like, no, don't do that, please. I think Cassian's got a type.
The only other thought I had was that Cinta might remind him of his sister in some way.
Yeah, a little bit.
And so it was less of like a flirty romantic thing and more of just like this feels familiar somehow. Because he
I was
also like
Bix, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But I mean, I think you're correct. I'm seeing Cassian just has a type. That's
he likes strong women.
with like dark features.
Yeah.
That's the, and who among us don't? So
yeah. So it's just something I did not pick up on the first watch, is like there's this moment later in the episode when he's trying to get like his arm looked at by Cinta, and Vel like very clearly moves in front of her and says, get your own bandage or whatever. Like, because they're like laughing
says you can dress yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
What she tells Andor.
Yeah. And then they point out, Skeen mentions Lieutenant Gorn and how he's central to their mission. And when Andor asks if Gorn might be leading them into a trap, Skeen flips the question back at him, basically saying like, listen, if they were leading us into a trap, it would have already happened by now. And
right.
And Andor's response is clear. He's here to win and leave unharmed. It's just a really good scene. This is, I think, my favorite, except what happens on the mountaintop. I think this is my favorite scene of this episode.
Yeah. It's great. Mine's coming later, I think, but this one, it's, I don't know, just all the character dynamics with the crew trying to come together to pull off this like near impossible feat, but not trusting each other. And then Cassian, at the same time that he's fighting internally to be there and like to want to be there and to commit and everything, he's also fighting everybody else in trusting him and like feeling like he even belongs there in the first place. And just all the different questions that everybody has throughout the episode. It's really pressing in like how real the stakes are becoming for everybody in their minds as this day approaches,
Yeah.
It's great.
It's so good. At Mon Mothma's home on Coruscant, she has breakfast with her husband, Perrin Firtha, and their daughter, Lita. Now, again, I think we mentioned this when we talked about it the very first time we watched it. It's so interesting. Her daughter's name is Leda or Lita.
Yeah.
And it sounds a lot like Leia. They kind of even look very similar. Right. And then, like, when you think about those looks that Leia and Mon Mothma, and there's always in the legends, and it seems like it's continued into canon, there's kind of a rivalry there a little bit. I kind of get it a little bit more now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe she sees her daughter a little bit in her.
Yeah, that's very possible. Yeah, it could just be like that. It's familiar Star Wars settings as far as the name and the outfit and the hairstyles and all that. But like, it's also really close. You're like, it's close. Really close. So I don't know that we're not supposed to draw that comparison.
Yeah, because think about it. Like, Leia is a junior senator at this point, right? Yeah. We've already seen her operating in kind of a rebellious fashion under Bail Organa in Star Wars Rebels, right? With the stealing of the Hammerhead ships and stuff. So she's a junior senator. I don't know that they've connected yet, like Mon Mothma and Leia. Yeah,
I don't know. Because Bail and Mon Mothma came to the rebellion from different angles, I think.
Yes.
It's not like they were already good friends and that's why they're both in the rebellion or whatever. Like I think they've probably been allies politically, just given their ideals.
Yeah. But I think we'll find out in Reign of the Empire, Mask of Fear. In our book club. We might find that out. Some more info on that. So Mothma had arranged for the driver, Chloris, to take Leda, I don't know how you say, to her morning class, but Leda reveals that her father will be taking her instead since she doesn't have an early class. And basically, like, she had set up a day for her and her daughter to spend some time together and do something. And Mothma insists that Leda get her coat, but Leda refuses, accusing her mother of using her for her own political agenda. And in frustration, Mothma storms out of breakfast early, clearly upset by her daughter's defiance. And I think the biggest thing is, like, Perrin is just like watching and kind of enjoying it.
Yeah, and I get the feeling that he has done something before this to kind of set this up.
Yeah, right. Like maybe mention it to her, or kind of manipulate that situation.
Right. Yeah, it's so tough because, and I love the way they show these dynamics unfolding in the Mothma home. But it's, I don't know. I'm reading into a lot here just because we don't have the text of all of this happening, right? But just from what we see, it seems like Mon Mothma has been, busy with her actual job, like being a senator and trying to do good through that. She's moonlighting with the rebellion already. She's doing money stuff. She's started this foundation to be able to even do more of that, and so she's been busy. And these are all great things, right? She's really trying to make a difference and be a light in the world. At the same time, that has to come at a cost of, like, time, attention, that kind of thing that she's not going to be able to put towards home and, like, her daughter and family and everything. As much as she likes to, like, what she would like to. I don't think that's, like, I think she cares about her daughter and her family and, like, wants these things to be good. It's just that she's pulled in all these different directions. And so she's, like, and I think it's evident because Leda already kind of seems like she feels Mon Mothma is checked out of her life. Like, oh, you don't worry, like, go on, you're off the hook, like.
Yeah.
So
she is losing it a little bit. Like, there is probably some truth there.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like, it's clear that she's not able to, like, Mon Mothma is just spread so thin, and all of these conflicting values and things she's trying to protect. It's just mounting for her.
And what I like about it, Mac, is that this is like a really relatable scene.
Yeah.
Anybody with a family has experienced this on some level. Maybe the stakes aren't that high in terms of rebellion, but, like, the pool of, like, what do I do? Where do I spend my time? How do I allocate the time that I have? Because time is your most precious commodity. Right. So, like, how do you spend it and where do you put it is such a hard thing to manage and balance, especially, when you've got loved ones. And so this was a really, really relatable scene to me.
For sure. Because, it's not like Mon Mothma's not doing anything wrong per se here, right?
Right.
Like, she's just in a position where she continually has to make such hard choices to do all the things that she's kind of responsible to do, you know? Yeah. Whether or not she actually is responsible for it, she feels that responsibility. Yeah, I don't know. It's great.
Yeah, and then just the icy nature between Perrin and Mon Mothma, of like when she kind of says like, "Thanks for helping,"
and he's enjoying it.
Yeah,
he's relishing it.
Yeah,
like it's bad. Like
it's not good.
Like to be clear, I don't think Perrin is acting in a. I don't think he's like reacting in a good way.
No.
So I'm not saying that Mon Mothma has been like neglecting her relationship with Perrin or anything. I think Perrin is just a butt.
Yes, he is.
But regardless of
Bantha hole.
Yeah. Regardless of like what he is and everything, that's still something Mon Mothma is feeling like she's failing at is
for
her
sure.
marriage, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's Perrin's fault, but yeah. So it's, I don't know, just they put so many cool pieces on the board and they didn't have to do any of that, right? Like we just needed the events of Mon Mothma doing stuff politically. Like we didn't have to know the personal stakes and like the day-to-day struggles for her, but I'm so glad we get a look at that because we get so much of that from the bottom up. Seeing how that works from the top down with Mon Mothma's position and everything is just a really refreshing thing.
And I think that's what sets Andor apart from the rest of the Star Wars TV shows is that it gets into things like this that other Star Wars properties, except novels, I would say, just don't have time to get into or don't care to do, right? And that's what makes this feel like prestige TV a little bit.
For sure. Right? And like, to be clear, I don't want them to be doing this in The Empire Strikes Back. Like, that's not what that is. You know,
of course
like,
not. Yeah,
we get some stuff like the Han and Leia. You know, they do enough of that to make the story whole and everything. But like, that's just not the focus.
No. But
we've got the time and attention and everything in this format, in this medium to do those stories. And I'm just glad we have the room.
Yeah. All I'm saying is I think the Book of Boba Fett could have scenes like this.
The Book of Boba Fett could. Yeah.
it could afford to have some more scenes like this.
It could.
We love the Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, she storms out. Back on Aldhani, the group begins to prepare for their heist with some serious tensions simmering. Karis Nimmick serves Andor some Dre milk for breakfast, which he describes as an acquired taste. I want to drink it. I want to taste it. Like I was imagining what it tastes like, and it tastes so bad, but I want to drink it.
Like I have acquired a lot of tastes that people say are acquired tastes and stuff. Usually those things are kind of right up my alley. So.
Give me some Dre milk.
Yeah.
Give me that Dre milk.
Got Dre milk?
Nimmick shows Andor a navigational tool he's been working on, discussing his desire to lessen their reliance on Imperial technology.
Yeah.
Which, again, this was something that kind of I glossed over, I think, in the first watch. And it's just one of those things where it's like, no, that's actually a really smart thing of like, not having to rely on the Empire and all of their tech because, like, can you even trust it?
Yeah.
Like, that's really smart. And then he talks about freedom and the Imperial thought machine that hides atrocities. And he says something that I think is very pertinent, that basically that they have so many atrocities in a day that you start to become numb to it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of like, whatever. That's just the way that it is now.
Yeah.
And you just start to get used to the new way of doing things when like that wasn't normal before.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is my favorite passage of dialogue in the episode, Nimmick. I love the character of Nimmick.
You're a little bit Nimmick yourself. You're a little Nimmick.
you know. I would
That's
love.
What I love about you.
I would love to, when I'm gone, be seen as someone like Nimic. That would be a great compliment to me.
I see.
I hope for that to be the case. But anyway, I digress. This is my favorite. What he's saying was just like, the way they, like, you just get buried in the caring. Like, there's like, because we do care. Like, we have to try to care about all of these things because there's so many terrible things happening all at once, and your empathy and your motivation and everything just gets spread too thin, like Mon Mothma. Yeah. You know, like her home is not comfortable because she's spread too thin right now. That happens ideologically and like in terms of activism and stuff. Like it's so hard to get everyone rallied around everything, right?
Yeah.
But there are so many things worth getting people to rally behind. So sometimes it's just about picking something to get enough movement and energy headed in the right direction so that you can eventually actually address the cause and not just every symptom that happens every day. You know, we've got, like, we're talking Andor. It's hard not to get political or like to talk about real life or anything, but like I just think about like school shootings and drone bombings of like us killing innocent people overseas or any particular like unarmed person being killed by police or like there's so many different things that are just taking so much like of your sanity, of your like your ability, your compassion and everything, and like something has to give eventually, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta focus on something so that movement can be made so that you address the problems, I guess. I don't know. Gets me fired up. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's because you are a little Nimic, like I said. But like, that's the thing is like, there's so much genuine truth into the statements that he's saying that like, that's what makes this feel so real and so special. And because it's like, hey, you can watch something like Star Wars and actually learn something from it in terms of, okay, well then how do I apply that to my real life in everyday situations?
Yeah.
And these are kind of those moments where it's like, okay, I see, like, I hear truth in what they're saying, even though they're talking about space wizards and
exactly,
dark space empires and stuff. So there's truth in fiction, and that's why we love it.
Yeah.
There's sometimes more truth in fiction.
Yeah.
They hide atrocities. Skeen dismisses Nimic's philosophical musing, suggesting he's overly focused on ideas. And Skeen asks Andor for his thoughts, but Andor isn't in the mood for conversation. And then he throws out the Dray milk. I was like, dude, I would drink that. Give it to me.
There are starving orphans on Mustafar. Like, don't waste Dray milk.
What are you doing, man? Because it seemed like the elvish bread from Fellowship of the Ring, the way they describe it, it's like you can drink this in a whole day.
One bite can sustain a man for many days or whatever.
How cool. I kind of want that, man. Because if I could stop eating and just like get all my nutrients from drinking, I would.
So like I love cooking and like the culinary art and experience and the cultural experience that is too much, I think, to rule it out.
It takes too much time. That's why I never liked Legos as a kid. I couldn't I could not spend the time I want to do the stories in my head. I don't want to have to build the thing before I can get the story out.
But what happens when the story in your head requires something that doesn't exist yet? You got to make it. That's what Legos are for.
Okay. Okay, Nimic. Okay. Later, Tamarin Barcona calls Andor to a meeting in his hut, and Nimic asks Skeen if he distrusts Clem, and Skeen admits that he doesn't trust him. Sartha and Barcona discuss their escape plans, but Andor realizes that they don't know how to transport the payroll out of the Imperial base. Barcona asks him how to handle the weight, and Andor offers his expertise on machinery, explaining how to calculate and manage it. And Andor insists on piloting the starship himself that will carry the stolen payrolls. He's basically like, listen, you guys don't even know how to get this thing into the air. And he's asking them all these questions, and he's kind of like freaking out when they're not totally sure.
Right.
Like, it might be this way. Maybe.
I think that's a totally a totally justified reaction from Andor too. Like, here everybody's acting like he's coming into this fully fleshed out plan that's so like timed down to the minute that like adding another person is just gonna throw the entire thing into jeopardy and like all this stuff. But here they don't even know how they're gonna get this. I don't even know what they're talking about, really. It's getting something off the rail.
The railing, like the ship is on a rail. We kind of see it in this next scene. It's like sitting on, it's almost like a monorail at Disney World.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to release it from the rail.
Yeah. Yeah. But Andor does. So I understand his frustration when they've all been like questioning his even being there from the get, and then they don't even have this piece of information, right? Right? So like I understand, and that throws like the stakes all in jeopardy again for Andor at this hour, right? He's just now, I think, realizing the depth of what he's getting into.
I think it also shows like why Luthen wanted and insisted that he join them.
Right, because he maybe could see things from an aerial view, not an actual aerial view, but like from a top-down perspective that everybody on the ground can't. Yeah. So and like I love that they're doing the operation this way, because we're getting a sense of the struggles of how the rebellion would have had to operate in the early days. It's just so cool. I love this episode. Dude. I love Andor.
It's so good. So meanwhile, at the Aldhani garrison base, Lieutenant Gorn reprimands 2 Imperial officers for not clearing a nearby target practice structure, and it's basically like one of the religious structures. They had like just put up target practice all over it, and I think like for him, he's pretending like you need to get this cleaned up because we've got that engineer coming from Coruscant. So let's get this cleaned up. But what we learn later is I actually think it like he's kind of disgusted that they're treating this religious site in such a way. Like I think that's kind of also the source of his frustration.
Yeah, because especially what we learn about him later on in the episode. He's doing espionage here too. He's also using this interaction to make sure it's going to be a skeleton crew that's like in base that night and all this stuff. But I agree. I think it's very clear throughout this episode he has a different respect for the people of Aldhani that the rest of everybody does not. Mm-hmm. And I think this was like his subtle, covert way of kind of putting that into practice.
Dang, I almost want to rewatch this episode again after we're done talking, just because it's so good, dude. Barcona tells Andor that his cover story is that he's an Imperial private assigned to special duty, transferred from the Al-Kinzi Air Base. She asks if he knows how to walk like an Imperial soldier, preparing him for his role in the mission. Then on Ferrix, the aftermath of the Ferrix incident continues to unfold. Imperial Security Bureau Lieutenant Supervisor Blevin observes workers clearing the damage caused by the recent fighting, and then Captain Tygo is busy clearing out guests and furniture from a hotel, which the ISB has acquiesced as their new headquarters. Yeah, thank you. It's their new headquarters. They're throwing everybody out and saying, we're in charge of this place now. And what is funny, Tygo asked Blevin if he could be promoted to prefect, and Blevin's like, listen, you could wear a ball gown if you want. Just get it done.
It's like your frivolity, like your frivolous nature is offensive to me. Get out of my sight is how that interaction seemed.
Yeah, it's just so funny to me. Like, because the guy's like, okay.
Right.
He doesn't even care.
It's like, oh, I get the title? Because and it doesn't even come with pay or anything. I think it's just it's a little bit of levity for the episode, of course, but it's also a good glimpse into the difference between what the average Imperial soldier is doing and concerned about, and they're very concerned with their own advancement, the title, the prestige, and all of that. And then what the rebels are talking about on Aldhani could not be more different, right? And like more like it's not. There could not be a bigger difference in like the life and death situations they're talking about and the absolutely meaningless trivia that this Imperial is discussing.
Right. So back on Aldhani, Tamarin, Barcona, drills Clem and the other male rebels in marching and handling blasters like Imperial soldiers. The goal is to blend in with the Empire using Lieutenant Gorn's access to enter the base. And Andor notices that Skeen is left-handed and suggests switching the position of his blaster since the rest of the team is right-handed. Tamarin reluctantly agrees to the adjustment after Vel is like, wait a second, why are you asking? And then he points out, well, like everyone's right-handed and he's left-handed, and I noticed that.
Well, it's like a pop quiz. She's like, I want to see just how observant you really are. Let me quiz you real fast. And then she starts looking around at everybody else, like, why aren't you on this guy's level almost?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, she's starting to realize his value, I think.
For sure.
Cinta spots an approaching TIE fighter that circles their camp before flying back to the local Imperial garrison, which includes a dam well as part of its defenses. So here's what I love about this arc. There's something so satisfying, number one, about hearing a TIE fighter.
Yeah.
Just hearing the Sinar twin ion engine. Oh yeah,
good pull there.
Came from a real place. That was so real.
Of recognition that was a good pull. It was a good pull.
Hey man, I know my stuff. And it's just so satisfying to listen to, but it's so satisfying to see it over the Scottish Highlands. Just that fly. It looks real. It feels real.
Yeah, because you can also see it because it's an atmospheric flight instead of being in space, so it's almost having to like drift on the wind and stuff like that in a way we don't normally get to see it. Yeah, it's cool. And you do also get to see, books talk about this a lot, but the Empire uses TIE fighters like flyovers as a means of like psychological suppression. Like they do it to remind everyone that they're constantly under the thumb of the Empire. Like that screech of the TIE fighter becomes synonymous with the fist of the Empire that's on your throat, like to anybody on the ground.
Yeah. And just, I mean, that had to hurt their eardrums. Just flying that low, flying so close to them. It gets me every time. I said on the another thing that gets me every time. I said on the Andor season 2 breakdown, I love when Rebel pilots go to and fro in the background of a shot. Isn't that so nice?
It's good. It's good. To and fro.
Mm-hmm. T-shirts coming.
I think it's called flying scissors, right? When you're trying to, my ace combat knowledge is failing me.
I'm just talking about the pilots in jumpsuits, in the orange jumpsuits, just running in the background frantically. That's
so you're not even talking about the ships being. No. I got you. I understand.
I am talking about Rebel pilots holding helmets in their hands,
scrambling.
They're
scrambling the fighters. Yes. Okay. I'm. It's good. It's good.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Don't you want to? Like, I wish we could scramble, like me and you. For a scene in Star Wars, we're just in the background scrambling.
An alarm goes off. We grab the nearest something and run to our predetermined post. Yeah, yes. I would be so on board for that.
Lucasfilm, if you're listening.
They're not.
So Lieutenant Gorn speaks with Corporal Kimsey, confirming that the Imperial Air Base expansion will destroy the local panoramic landscape, and Kimsey raises concerns about the local Donnies, but Gorn urges him to focus on his duties, warning him about tomorrow's rounds. And he also kind of makes like a I can smell them from here type thing of like they smell bad, so hopefully not a lot come. And you can see this look on Gorn's face of like, yeah. And he does not appreciate that comment at all.
Right. Yep. Well, I think it's specifically because he's seen thousands of Aldani in the area. Like he
fell in love with one.
Right.
You know, and so like to him, it's like an affront of like, how dare you? And that's what makes his character really interesting too.
For sure.
So Cinta tends to Andor's arm. That's that scene we were talking about where it's a little flirtatious and Vel kind of steps in while Andor takes offense when Skeen checks his pouch. Meanwhile, Andor prepares for the mission by donning an Imperial Army uniform with Tamarin observing. And then back at the ISB headquarters, ISB Supervisor Dedra, I've been saying it wrong, Dedra Miro passes by Blevin and aides discussing plans for a conference. Later, Miro enlists ISB attendant Hurt to investigate the missing items in the Imperial ledgers. Hurt checks the Hosnian register, but finds no missing objects. Hosnian Prime, The Force Awakens.
It becomes the seat of the New Republic.
Eventually, then it gets destroyed by Starkiller Base.
Yep.
Originally, J.J. Abrams wanted it to be Coruscant, and Lucasfilm was like, no,
you can't. We can't. We got to have Coruscant in the future. I think that's wise.
It's a wise choice.
I think they should have made it Chandrilla, though.
I agree. I agree with that.
Because then there's like it wouldn't be at this time that we're watching Mon Mothma, but eventually you get the story of Leia and Mon Mothma talking about how they've lost their homeworlds, and like Mon Mothma never really understood Leia until now, and like all this stuff. Like that could be. Yeah, there's a lot there, but
Yep. Because then Bel Organa's planet's gone, Mon Mothma's planet's gone.
Yeah.
The two pillars of the rebellion, you know. For sure. Yeah. Why? Yeah, it should have been Chandra.
Yeah. I don't think they'd really worked all of that out yet.
No.
In terms of like that timeline wasn't in place fully. Like it got placed in the journey to The Force Awakens. So
yeah, this was basically like, okay, we can't do Coruscant. Let's do one that looks exactly like it.
Let's just the evil twin of Coruscant. Yeah.
Morrisant. Yeah, so he's checking the Hosnian register but finds no missing objects. He suggests that the Imperial Navy ledgers are the only remaining option, although they are notoriously resistant to admitting mistakes. Miro reluctantly admits uncertainty about her next steps, but Hurt reassures her that they're on the right track, and then we get a lot of name drops here. Hurt notices a pattern in the stolen items. Kessel. We know where that is. We saw him Solo. Kessel Spice Mines. It's been mentioned since A New Hope. Fondor. Fondor is a ship-building planet. They build all the starships on Fondor. Not all of them, but most of them. Luthen's ship is a Fondor hullcraft.
Yeah, I mean it's referred to as the Fondor or the Fonder. If you're Luthen. The Fonder.
This next one kind of shocked me a little bit. Jakku. They mentioned Jakku. And then Base K, which we don't really know. And then the Starpath unit from Steerguard Naval Yard. Together, Miro and Hurt deduce that the rebels are spreading their thefts to make the attack seem random. And they start to piece together like, hey, if we were going to do this, that's exactly how we would do it. Yep. And Hurt he kind of like makes a mention of like, it's too random to be random.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's a good scene. I mean, it's mostly them just doing some bureaucracy and stuff, but like it just shows that the ISB is on Andor's trail. And Dedra in particular is now like really starting to make this a personal thing. Like she's popping some kind of pill to keep working.
Is it like caffeine pills
or something stronger? You never. You never know. I mean,
well,
like
listen,
if the Empire
did you see the Saved by the Bell episode with Jessie when she took caffeine pills?
I didn't.
That was a very serious episode, Mac.
Ooh, I missed that one. I missed the hug and the lesson.
It's you've probably seen the GIF of it where however you want to say that, where she says, "I'm so excited, I'm so excited, I'm so scared." It's that. And she's like crying, laughing. It's because she took too many caffeine pills. So I'm just here to tell you the dangers of caffeine pills were drilled into me via Saved by the Bell.
Yeah. I mean, that is about how I start feeling after like 3 or so cups of coffee. Is like I'm so scared so fast. I'm just
like
tired more fast now.
That's why I've switched to decaf, because 1 cup does that to me. I'm like, oh God.
Ride the lightning.
Oh, man. Anxiety. On Aldhani, Cassian and his rebel allies gather around a fire of their model of the Imperial base, preparing for their upcoming heist. You just know Nimic was like, "Oh, we have to burn it."
Yeah, I worked so hard on that. I wanted to take it home, use it for my war games, my tabletop war games.
It would be a good one. Vel and the team raise a toast to the rebellion. The next day, they travel towards the base, and Vel makes Clem rehearse the stages and signals of their plans. And Andor starts to question why they're relying on Lieutenant Gorn, and Vel explains Gorn's backstory. He lost his promotion after falling in love with a local Donnie woman, which soured him on the Empire, and she emphasizes that everyone has their personal rebellion. And I love that line of like, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about. Like, it takes a lot of people with their own personal rebellion to start a general big rebellion for it to actually work.
Yeah. And it also it reminds me of like Agent Callus from Rebels, how we've seen so many different people's personal rebellions play out differently, because like Saul Guerrera is having his own version of the rebellion, and that looks a lot different. He was
trained by Anakin Skywalker.
That'll do it. That'll do it. But so from both the like quote unquote good guys side and the quote unquote bad guys side, we see so many different instances of that. So I don't know. I love that detail for Gorn. It makes a lot of his actions that we've seen previously. It adds another layer of meaning on top of them. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those cool things too of like, you feel like you learn so much about Gorn and you really don't spend all that much time with them.
No.
But like the writers have done such a good job of writing, I guess, just like making them feel like, okay, there's personal stakes here, and I understand everyone's motivations, and that's not always true in everything that you watch. They've just done a really thorough and good job of making it feel natural and informing the audience like what's at stake for them personally. So golf clap to you guys. On Coruscant, Edie Karn speaks with their son Syril, explaining that Uncle Harlow doesn't think police work suits him.
I also don't think police work suits Syril.
I'm having much more fun pretending this is Palpatine. But it's like the robot chicken Palpatine talking to Edie Karn.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah, of course. It does. Like, I do love the idea of Palpatine taking time out of his day of enacting his grand scheme to bring the Sith back into an era of dominance over the galaxy. Just taking a little break, a little personal day from that to go talk to Edie and be like, all right, what you're telling me about Syril, it seems like he doesn't have the right temperament. Like, I think we should probably try him in an office. Like, it's a very funny thought.
Because
I don't think he has the temperament for police. I can't. Why my Palpatine turned into a pirate again? I did too many pirate voices during Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, but that's just so funny to me. Just pretending that's him. Yeah, Syril asks what field Harlow believes he should pursue, and Edie reassures him that they are relying on Harlow's judgment for Syril's career direction. Again, it's just way more fun thinking it's Palpatine.
Right. But like, so one thing I want to just to reaffirm kind of what I was saying about Edie and Syril like earlier. It's so important, and like Edie is making it her own personal crisis that Syril has lost this one job, right? Like, give him a minute to like figure out what he wants to do, you know? Like, it's so like, again, and it's coming from a place of like love, but also probably some pride and stuff like that too. That's not as noble of an intention. So, you know, it's complicated. I really like what they do with. I keep saying it throughout this episode. I really like what they do with like the personal dynamics between characters.
It's so good, dude. Again, I am very serious. I want to rewatch it. I just watched it last night. I want to rewatch it again after talking about it. It's just so good. At the Aldhani garrison base, Lieutenant Gorn confronts two subordinates about an unpainted wall, emphasizing the importance of impressing a Coruscant engineer visiting that day. The corporals express that many of the soldiers are demoralized and don't want to be stationed on Aldhani. And they basically say, listen, we've heard about the Eye. It's like one of the only good things about being stationed here.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can paint this later and then like go and see this event? And Gorn's like, you're going to have to make up for it later, but okay.
Yeah. But and then perfect. And he's walking away smiling because he just got them to like want to do what he wanted them to do themselves.
Right.
You know?
Less people in that space.
Right. So, you know, the ends have been accomplished through means that like didn't even take that much out of Gorn. So,
right.
Good situation.
Yeah. So tensions within the rebel group escalate when Skeen ambushes Clem, Andor, and cuts off his Kawadi signet made from sky kyber. Skeen accuses Andor of hiding his past, but Andor deflects, challenging Skeen to admit he knows exactly who he is. And as things escalate, Tamarin and Vel intervene, trying to calm Skeen down. And what I really like about this is Cassian just like straight up calls everyone out. He's like, listen, do not let me be the excuse for this to all fall apart. You are looking for a scapegoat and you're going to try to use me because you're losing your nerve.
Right.
This is when things fall apart. Don't fall apart now.
Yeah. Like this is the kind of stuff that I'm really glad they went out of their way to show us, like how the dynamics leading up to a mission like this goes. How like all of them are going through this same cycle of like commitment and resolve, and then worry, and then distrust, and then re-resolving themselves, and like it's this cycle. And I'm glad we just get a glimpse into it, because that like. I think we can also extrapolate that to all the characters we see in the saga films doing stuff like this, you know? Like, I want to think that, like, Luke had to go through all of this as he's getting in the X-Wing to go do the first trench run, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So like,
or to go to Cloud City, like right before he lands, he's like,
exactly.
Bad idea. Maybe I should listen to Yoda and Ben.
Right. So, you know, I'm glad we get like a microscope on what that looks like, because it makes everything else more powerful.
Yeah, it's just so good. Nimic spots a ship approaching from the valley, easing the situation, kind of like perfectly timed, that ship. And again, just the way when you see the shuttle fly in the valley, there's something so real and satisfying about seeing it that way. I was just like, ooh, an Imperial shuttle. That's nice. So that's the guy, the engineer arriving from Coruscant, I'm sure. But it helps them refocus their attention, and they pack up. And then later, during the scene, Andor admits that he's a mercenary and he's getting paid, but his involvement is motivated by money. When questioned by Tamarin Barcona, Vel reveals that Rael insisted on including Clem in the mission. She doesn't mention his name, but just basically said, it's kind of out of my hands. I had to do this.
Right.
Skeen expresses regret about not calling off the mission earlier, and Andor defends his stance, drawing a distinction between being afraid and losing nerve.
Yep.
He makes it clear that if things go wrong, they shouldn't blame him, and Vel decides to postpone revealing Clem's past until after the mission. Then back on Coruscant, Senator Mon Mothma and her husband Perrin travel on an airspeeder after a meeting with Gar Tefid. Firtha, or Perrin, expresses his suspicions about Mon Mothma's secretive activities and her new charitable foundation. So Perrin is kind of on to her in terms of noticing, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that makes me nervous for Mon Mothma.
Because I don't trust Perrin to have Mon Mothma's best interests at heart.
No, not at all. Except here's a twist I could see. If he feels like it's threatening his ability to just have a good life and be and have fun, like, which seems like his only true motivation. Yeah. Losing Mon Mothma might mean losing all of that. Yeah. So I could see from a very like skewed way of like, I could see that play out skewed in season 2 is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I hope he dies by a terrible death.
Yeah. Really painful and on screen if possible.
Oh, yeah. Like when Ramsay Bolton was killed in Game of Thrones. Kind of like that. Something similar. Meanwhile, Syril Carn studies a hologram of Cassian, possibly continuing his investigation or obsession with the mercenary. This is where it makes it super hard to determine where his character is going to go.
Yeah.
Because they're also building sympathy for him in terms of like understanding where he's coming from. And I just really don't know what the writers have planned for him. It could go either way.
And like, I don't even know if sympathy is the word I would use, because I don't think we're supposed to like Syril.
No, no.
But it's understanding. It's understanding.
Maybe. Yeah.
I think we understand Syril, which is more important ultimately.
Yeah, for sure. So back on the Aldhani Imperial base, as the rebels approach the Imperial base, Skeen observes that it resembles Nimic's model, with Nimic confirming he had plenty of time to study the site, and then Vel instructs them to get a fire going. Meanwhile, at the base, Lieutenant Gorn spots the rebels' fire, raising tensions. Also, like, I'm not sure how that's the best plan. Like, they just keep waving that fire. I'm like, put it down. Please don't draw attention to yourself. Yep. Skeen shares a personal story with Andor, revealing that the Empire is responsible for the death of his brother. An Imperial prefect flooded his brother's land, leading to his brother's despair and eventual suicide. Skeen's brother had been growing century-old pepper trees, adding a personal, emotional layer to Skeen's hatred of the Empire. Skeen doesn't say, like, I'm sorry, but he basically says that's as good as, or as close to an apology that you're going to get. Yep. And Andor kind of is like, I'll take it.
Like, that was practically both men breaking down, crying, and hugging. In terms of their emotional range, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Vel informs Andor that Tamarin Barcona will take charge of the mission from now on. If successful, Vel promises to reunite with them the following night. Barcona seeks Andor's approval to lead, which Andor grants, signaling a shift in dynamics among the group as they prepare for their mission. And then on Coruscant, we finally come back to Luthen. He hadn't been in the entire episode, and he awaits anxiously for a transmission. And I didn't know this. I had to look this up because I wanted to know what his shop was called, but it's called the Galactic Antiquities and Objects of Interest. That's what his shop is. How cool.
That's a great name. It's just generic enough, but interesting enough to be real. Does that make sense? Like, it's generic enough to not draw too much attention and stuff like that, but...
If you told me this was the title of a Star Wars middle grade book, I would believe you. Yeah. Galactic Antiquities and Objects of Interest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in your objects, Luthen.
Whoa. His assistant. His assistant.
All right. And scene. Moving on.
His assistant, Clea, or Cleo. These are names that.
Clea, I think.
It's Clea. Suggests that, but the way that they pronounce things, because some people have accents in the show.
Right.
It confuses me. Suggests that they turn off the transmitter after waiting for over an hour. Luthen expresses his concern about the mission and the risk he took by including Andor. He's starting to have second thoughts and lose his nerve a little bit, and then like on that edge. And they discuss their clients for tomorrow, but ultimately decide to close the shop for the night, leaving Rael with lingering uncertainty.
It's like this scene to cap off this episode is so good because like we have basically been Luthen, right? We're just watching and listening and dying to know what's going to happen. Yeah. And it's him just worrying and trying to check every little thing when it's out of his hands. It's been out of his hands for a while. Like ever since he dropped Andor off, that was pretty much it, I think. And so like it's of course all of the uncertainty of what everything that could go wrong and they won't know until after and all of that. This whole thing could go down, the whole operation could get traced back to him and all kinds of stuff. But then what Clea says with like, but it could be, or maybe I think Luthen says like, it could be the end of everything, or it could be just the beginning. And I think that thought is actually what's scaring Luthen more.
Yeah. I think if it works, then we're on.
But then like, it's so real after, if this works, things are real and irrevocable and permanent in a way that like it is a mark of it's a line of demarcation. So it's just the perfect way to cap this episode off, I think.
Yeah, and then I just kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the dynamic between Luthen and Clea because it doesn't seem like she is under him. No. There seemed like the way that she talks to him is like they're on the same level, it feels like.
Yeah, they seem more like co-conspirators than like operative commander kind of deal. If anything, I think Clea's calling the shots.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
Because she's the one kind of that has the reins on Luthen. And so like she kind of seems to have more of a handle on things at any given moment than he does. And that could just be their different, personalities and stuff like that. But, and it could be that like Clea was originally involved in she was the original person who was involved in the rebellion and then got Luthen in on things,
Yeah, it could be.
So like who knows? But I agree with you. It doesn't seem like it's Clea is Luthen's assistant in the rebellion, even if that's how it is in the shop.
Sure. It's just super interesting. We see some scenes of her grabbing Andor pretty forcefully in the season 2 trailer. Doesn't give me good feeling for whatever happens to Luthen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of deaths because think about how many characters are built up in this show that we don't see at all in Rogue One.
There's plenty of people that could just be living out their lives on Ferrix afterwards and stuff. I'm thinking of like Brasso and stuff.
Yeah.
But then, like, anybody else, pretty much, something has to happen with, and like we already know where Cassian ends up and all this stuff. So yeah, I think season 2 is probably gonna be pretty bloody in terms of character deaths and stuff.
I feel like Game of Thrones.
A little bit. But with there being more time in between each episode, like each arc and stuff like that too, who knows how they'll how that's going to feel. I don't even know if it's going to feel like following this same group of characters all at the same time like season 1 did, you know?
No, I think it's going to feel a little faster in that sense. But like, I was thinking about this the other day, Mac. Like, had they not named this show Andor and called it maybe Rebellion or Rebel or something like that, they could have continued it even after Cassian's death.
Yeah.
And like, how cool would it have been for each season? Like, okay, the next season takes place during A New Hope, but we see Rebel operatives doing their own thing while A New Hope is going on. And then the next season takes place during Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Let's see the Bothans get the second Death Star plans. Like, we've been talking about that forever, ever since Rogue One came up. Because everybody's
Tony
like,
Gilroy,
didn't
keep going, man.
Didn't the Bothans get the Death Star plans? We'd already knew that. It's like, that's the second one.
Yeah. That's Rogue 2.
Rogue 2. Yeah, we'll get Rogue 2 eventually.
Yeah. Many Bothans died.
This has been a fantastic recording. It was great to talk Andor season 5 or episode 5. I love this episode so much. If you can't tell, sorry for getting a little fired up at times, but
you're our little Nimic. We love you.
It's a good episode. Anything that makes you feel things is good. So. Thank you guys so much for listening. Check out our Patreon if you want more from us. Definitely leave us a 5-star review and rating on Apple Podcasts. Probably look for some information on some things coming soon about ratings and reviews. We'll see what's coming up.
Listen, this is gonna be. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. The prizes that we will have for that are going to make it worth it. You're going to maybe even want to create new Apple user
IDs to leave some additional reviews. Yeah, we'll see. Do that. That's a great way to support us. Follow us on social media, do all of that. And we will be back, of course, next week with our breakdown of episode 6 of Andor on our Rix Road to season 2. But until then, keep the watch.